All right, hello everybody. This is Don't Be Ridiculous, episode 31 now.
There we go.
31, can't believe it. Missed
A lot of these.
last week, but there's no shortage of stuff happening. So, got to get caught up on all the news. The major story for this week that we're going to have some thoughts on that we got to talk about is the Dolphins traded for
Chris Rock.
What'd you say?
I said Will Smith slapping Chris Rock.
That's right. Other than Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, which obviously is the number one story everywhere.
If you haven't seen SNL, they did a really funny skit last night where it was like a seat filler was talking to Will Smith. Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, people should check that out.
Like, yeah, I'm crazy. It makes perfect sense because they portrayed Will Smith as just like, this is just
stop making fun of him. It was great.
This is just what I do in my everyday life, no big deal.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. What was the first word to talk about? The big.
So the Dolphins, in their infinite wisdom, to try to fix their team, traded for Tyreek Hill. They traded 5 draft picks, and they are going to pay him $120 million over 4 years.
Yep. It's all guaranteed, right?
No, it's mostly guaranteed. I think 70.
Yeah,
I think 70 million is guaranteed. So it's
70 million. All right, that's a lot.
Mostly guaranteed. So my initial reaction is, I understand what the Dolphins are trying to do. They're putting everything into this season to try to make it work and try to convince us that they have a quarterback. Even though it's clear to me that the team knows they don't have a quarterback and they can't. This is not.
Are they trying to convince us, or are they trying to convince themselves?
Well, no, I think they know. I think the Dolphins. My opinion is the Dolphins know what the deal is, but I think it's a desperate move made by a desperate team. I think the general manager knows that they have to make the playoffs. As I predicted when the offseason started, the Dolphins are probably going to take some swings because the general manager is trying to save his job. So this is the move that they made to try to win this year. We can talk about the length of the contract and talk about years going forward, but none of that really matters. This is just made for next year. The Dolphins want to show that they're worth something, so they have to make the playoffs. So this is the big swing that they're taking to try to accomplish that.
Yeah. I went because it's happened like 2 weeks ago. I've been all over the map in terms of what I think about this. It's one of those things where you see it and you're like, the Dolphins aren't ready to win the Super Bowl now. This is the kind of move you think like the Rams would make, where it's like, okay, they're ready to go. They're just, let's get this other player. Why not? Because we're trying to win it all this year. And it's like, you guys aren't. I mean, you like. If they make the playoffs, sure. There's 7 teams from the AFC get into the playoffs. So by that rationale, yeah, maybe. But I mean, they, a decent year and go 9-8 and not make the playoffs. I mean, the AFC is loaded. So, I just don't. It's like, do we really need to do this to convince her, to try to prove to people that Tua is good? And we were talking about this like earlier this week. What's your definition of success? Is it just making the playoffs? Because they almost made the playoffs last year, and it's not like Tua was all that good. So if they make the playoffs and Tua's like marginally better, like he has, I think Colin Cowherd was talking about this. Say he has like 23, 24 touchdowns and like 9 picks, and they win 10 games. Like, are you really going to be blown away by that? Like, short of him throwing like 30 touchdown passes and having several games where he throws like 300 yards and scores 30 points multiple times throughout the season, like I don't think there's anything he could do to change my opinion of it. And the other thing that I just find kind of, ridiculous about this is like, oh, he's got all these playmakers. All Tua's got to do is get the ball out of his hands. Well, I mean, to Tua's credit, he did get the ball out of his hands last year. And, like you saw it, we watched it. I mean, it wasn't that great. It's like Mike McDaniel. Yeah, he coached with Kyle Shanahan a bunch. You're like, yeah, he coached with San Francisco. Was San Francisco's offense explosive? Like every now and then they'd open something up for Deebo Samuel or something. And I think the Dolphins can probably do that. Like the running game will probably be better. And like, look, even last year I could point to different plays that Tua made where it's like, oh, that was kind of a big play. Like, yeah, I think they could probably do that every now and then, and maybe a little bit more often because they've shored up the offensive line a little bit. But like, again, what's your definition of success? Like, I don't see how he's going to do anything that's going to make my perception of him dramatically shift. I mean, I don't know. Again, like I said, I've gone a bunch of different ways on this. I kind of think it's a lot to give up for the guy, and 5 draft picks. And also, I think in the last 2 years of this contract, you're really going to eat it because I think he's going to decline physically, and I don't understand how you're going to get anything close to what Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid got out of Tyreek Hill for the time that he was in Kansas City. So if you don't do that in the first couple of years of the contract, then it seems like you're sort of massively overpaying for something that's not going to deliver. So plus they gave up 5 draft picks, and they still have their offensive line still isn't fully, shored up. And also I'd like them to have draft picks because they still need a quarterback. Like we know they need a quarterback. So
yeah. So I was listening to Mike Lombardi. He used to be an NFL general manager, and he's on a podcast called the GM Shuffle. And so he basically went over this move, and he basically said, look, the Dolphins made this move for yards after the catch. They know Tua is not going to be able to throw the ball 40 yards down the field. He's not a deep ball thrower at this point. And, he hasn't shown to be that in the NFL at all.
Well, let me put it this way. I do find it interesting when people say that. I think sometimes people may get a misperception of that because, like, if you wanted, I could find highlights of Tua throwing passes that are not necessarily somewhat far down the field, right? But those are few and far between. And the other thing is, when you watch his deep ball, there are certain quarterbacks that watch their deep ball. I'm like, oh, okay, he could do that all the time if he wanted to, right? But Tua's ball is kind of, I don't want to say it's like a duck that got shot and it's just sort of fall, but it's not like Russell Wilson. It's not like Justin Herbert. It's not like even the balls he threw in college before he injured his hip. You're watching it. It's like, it's not just that the receivers are open, but it's like the ball takes a little while to get there. So it's not necessarily that his arm is just incredibly weak and he can only throw the ball 5 yards. We know that's not the truth, but can he sustainably throw the ball down the field? No, we haven't seen that. So anyway, continue.
Yeah, so, basically, like, the Dolphins are going to be a run after the catch team. They're going to be based on the running game, just like the San Francisco 49ers offense was. They're going to try to get the ball to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill and try to get them to do stuff after the catch. Okay, that logically makes sense. But what the other thing that Mike Lombardi said about the offensive lineman is, okay, the guard that they got, I think is it Collins? I can't remember. But
they got 2. I mean, the right. Armstead was the one, and then they got that guard.
Right. So he said that the guard, Collins, basically got his butt kicked all of last season. He wasn't very good. And Armstead's problem is he can't stay healthy. So he was higher on Tyreek Hill than he was on the offensive lineman. And if those two guys don't, make the left side of the offensive line pretty good, then all of this is meaningless. It really doesn't make any difference because he won't have any time to throw the ball anyway. So, I mean, the other thing is, like, so you're going to go all in, right? You got to make the playoffs this year. This is your move? Like, I just feel like it just feels like we're putting all our chips into the middle of a game we don't have much of a chance to win. It just feels like, you and not only that, so you're going to give up, you talked about the money later on. I'm not as concerned about the money. That doesn't bother me as much because the Dolphins aren't paying anyone anyway. Like, they don't have any high salaries on their team. So the money doesn't bother me because it's not like they're going to pay their quarterback anytime soon. So what bothers me more is that the Green Bay Packers traded Devontae Adams to the Raiders for a first and a second. Why do the Dolphins have to give up three more draft picks? Like, they basically gave up this entire draft that's coming up in a month for this guy. And it's just like, why? Like, we couldn't have gotten some, you couldn't get some decent wide receivers?
There's a pretty good wide receiver draft.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the Dolphins are not in the position where they still need players. Like, I'm not excited about.
Exactly. If you need players, you need draft picks. So.
Right. I'm not real excited about the 29th pick or whatever it is in the first round, but you could trade down and get an extra second round pick if you wanted. Like, there's
in the first and second round, you can get there's guys there that can play. That's right. The third round, it gets a little sketchier, and then the further back you go, more sketchy. But yeah.
Yeah. So, and the other thing is, Brian Flores has got to be sitting in Pittsburgh going, why didn't you do any of this stuff for me? Where was my all-in move with trying to get, better players? They didn't do any of that.
Point. We talked about this. Okay. For any of the Dolphins fans who believe in Tua and they're all excited about this year, let's be clear here. When they went on an 8-game winning streak last year, why did that happen? Well, partially the schedule wasn't that hard, and also their defense played really well. And the thing you have to remember, in the first half of the season, the guy who's going to be their defensive coordinator this year was calling the plays. Their defense wasn't that good. Flores took over play calling for the defense in the second half of the year, and the defense was much better. Okay? So if you think the defense is going to be exactly the same or better than it was last year, I got news. I don't think that's going to be the case. They may take a little bit of a step back. And so that means you're telling me the team has to be led more by their offense. And if you watch their offense last year, I don't think that's a very good idea. Like, that's not an encouraging sign to me that they're going to have more success this year than they did last year.
Yeah. So you go all in on this move with a brand new coach in his first year, and you're just, it's kind of like I said, this reeks of desperation. It's a little bit like the Browns trading for Deshaun Watson, except Deshaun Watson actually can make your team better. Like, he actually affects whether you win games or not.
Yeah.
This move really doesn't. So, yeah, it just I feel like we're going to be sitting here next draft. Now, good thing is the Dolphins have 2 first-round picks and 2 third-round picks in next year's draft. So if this doesn't work or they realize Tua is not the guy anymore, they'll have some ammunition next year. But the only problem is, this is another thing, that I haven't brought up on here, but so this draft that's coming up, in 3 weeks or whatever, it's not a good quarterback draft, right? There's nobody who's like a bona fide superstar. And they're like, well, next year's draft, there's quarterbacks. Yeah, there's 2 quarterbacks that are supposed to be really good. They'll be taken in the first 2 picks. So the Dolphins aren't likely to be able to get one of those. So we could be in, this is a situation where, I hate to say it, we could be in for yay, the Dolphins make the playoffs, and then, or they don't, well, if they don't make the playoffs, it's a serious problem. But yay, the Dolphins barely make the playoffs, they get destroyed by whoever they play, and we're next year sitting in the same situation next year.
Yeah, where Tua is still the quarterback, and you're like, they're not going to sign him to another contract, are they? Like, that's one of those things that's like, I hopefully fan bases start to get a little more annoyed with this. Like, guys, you can't get very far if you don't have an elite quarterback. And if the team keeps trying to sell you on like, oh, we're just going to be solid everywhere else, it's like, that doesn't work anymore. So, I understand it's very difficult to get a quarterback. It's not that easy. Okay. But it's just, again, that drafting Tua over Justin Herbert is going to be something Dolphins fans are going to be thinking back on for a long time until they get another quarterback. Maybe that'll be faster than I think, but I was watching I sent you a YouTube video the other day, which was a compilation of pre-draft takes about Justin Herbert that you're listening to him now and you're like, oh my God, seriously? Like, seriously, you got like, okay. You know,
My favorite wasn't a Herbert. Well, it wasn't specifically Herbert take. My favorite was the Dan Orlovsky one on ESPN, where he said the gap between Tua and Herbert is pretty wide. Like Tua is significantly better than Justin Herbert is, and it's kind of comical, as it's at the same time that the general manager Mike Tannenbaum, who used to be the general manager of the Dolphins at one point, is like, you can't draft this guy. The injury is too dangerous. You can't do this.
yeah.
So anyway, yeah, we could go on and on bashing our team all we want, but
Yeah, I don't think we really we're really that like. I mean, if I wanted to be the put rose-colored glasses on or give you like the positive spin on it. Okay, look, it's entirely possible that Mike McDaniel can scheme up some stuff, and the Dolphins could have some exciting plays next year. Okay, particularly if they're playing a bad team. All right. I mean, Tua played pretty well against the Atlanta Falcons. He played pretty well against Jacksonville. There's probably a few other games in there where he made some plays. So, like, yeah, maybe you get some of those, but against good teams, like, I just don't like the Buffalo Bills are. You want to talk about miles? The gap between something being miles wide. I mean, between the Bills and the Dolphins. I mean, the Bills have gone all in this year, as they should. I mean, I think the Bills. They should probably get to the Super Bowl, at least get to the Super Bowl this year. So, yeah, I just, maybe some exciting plays this year. So you got that to look forward to, and maybe they make the playoffs. But overall, the long-term outlook is just not, whatever.
Not great. So, we'll see how this goes.